All right, so today we are experimenting with our Hot Wheels. So you should have chosen one car. You should have then chosen if you wanted to use one of your ramp pieces or two. And you also have your textbooks. You have 1, 2, and 3 textbooks. And we're gonna try different trials of putting the car down the ramp and see how far it goes. So you have your measuring tape, that yellow measuring tape inside of your bags, and you're going to measure how far it goes. And like Mrs. Melson said, do not push the car, just drop it down and see how far it travels. Now you might end up at a half an inch at some point. You can just round. So if you want to round to the nearest inch, then you would either round to, if you had something like 13.5 inches, you could round up to 14 inches. If you have like 13.25 inch, then you'd round down to 13 inches. Okay, now again, you'll want to watch the video that was shown on how to set up this experiment. Mrs. Melson shows where to put the measuring tape and how to set it up. So I'm just gonna make up some numbers right now. You should not use these numbers. These are just made up. You're gonna use the numbers that you get when you do your trial. So I'm gonna pretend right now that I put one book with my ramp and my car and I let it go. So the first time I let it go, let's say that it goes 24 inches. Again, I'm just making these numbers up. This could be totally unrealistic. Let me use a marker so you can see it better. So 24 inches. And I believe your measuring tape is in inches and not centimeters, but if I'm wrong, then you would just change the label. Okay, trial 2, let's say that this time it goes 27 inches. And trial 3, I drop it down again. This time it goes 22 inches. Again, I'm making these numbers up just to show you an example. You want to actually measure how far your car travels when you put it down the ramp. And you can watch the earlier video to set that up. All right, so now what we're going to do is find the average. And if you watch the video showing how to find averages, you add up all of your data points and you divide by the amount that there are. So the average is the same as the mean. If you've ever heard of the mean, and I don't mean mean as in he's being mean. I mean the mean as in the average. So when we look for the mean or the average, we're going to add up all the data points or the numbers and divide by the number that there are. So I'm going to add up 24, 27, and 22, and then divide by 3 because I have 3 digits. Now, you guys have a calculator in your bag. I'm going to go ahead and use my cell phone calculator just because I have it right here. So I'm going to put in 24 plus 27 plus 22. And then I'm going to hit equals to make sure that I don't make a mistake here. So the first thing you're going to do is add them all up and get a number. Then I get 73, and I'm going to divide that by 3. And you will likely get a decimal here. What you're going to do is round to the nearest inch or centimeter, depending on what is on your ruler. So this one is going to be 24 inches is my average. Okay, now I want to show you what happens if I type this in the calculator and I don't stop after adding them. So I have 24 plus 27 plus 22, and then I'm not going to hit equals, I'm going to hit divided by 3. Okay, you'll see that I get a totally different answer, and this one you can tell doesn't make as much sense. The average is telling me, what do I usually get when I try this experiment? Well, I don't usually get 58. I usually get closer to 24. That's the average. So this one made a mistake because what happened is when I put it into the calculator divided just that last trial point by 3. So it totally changed the result of my answer. So make sure after adding you stop and then take the number that you added and divide it by 3. Okay, so I'm not going to do the other two, but I want to show you what happens here when I put this on the bar graph. So now when I go ahead and take my data and put it on the bar graph, the first thing that I want to do is label my graph. So up top, I want to come up with a label for what this graph is showing. And this is showing the average inches traveled. And notice that it is a title, so I am capitalizing it. Okay, now a bar graph shows bars that go up to certain data points. So this is the distance the car traveled, and mine is in inches, which I believe yours is in too. So I'm just gonna put IN so they know. And when I look at my data points here, I need to figure out what scale I wanna use to show my data points. So right now, my data points are low enough that I could make my scale go up by 1. If you end up with something like 35 and 45 and 42 as your data points, maybe you're going to want to use a different scale to get up higher. And I'll show you what that looks like. So maybe you want to count by 2s. So maybe every notch you want to be worth 2. So I'm going to try to make my notches about the same distance apart to keep it very even. And I'm going to say that each one of these notches equals 2. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my average for number 1, and I am only doing the average here. I'm not going to graph my trials. I'm only going to graph my average. So I'm graphing 24, where I have number of books 1 is 24, number of books down here, I'm looking for 1, and the average of the books of the trials for one book was 24 inches. So now I'm going to take my bar and I'm going to go all the way up until I get to 24 and bring it down. And you can shade it in if you want as well. And there's the average of one book is 24 inches. Okay. Now, if you end up with an odd number, what do you think you're going to do? Well, if 2 books, the average was 13, and there is no 13 notch, I'm going to go right in between 12 and 14, and that's where I'm going to draw my bar. Okay. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be pretty close to where it falls. Okay, and again, I'm just making this up and pretending that the average of book 2 was 13. Okay, if you have any questions, let me know. This is how you're going to set up your graph.